Welcome to Chromatic Counsel, the podcast where we dive into the journey of attorneys, their successes, challenges, and of course, their go-to wardrobe colors. I'm your host, Carrie Heaps, and as a color and body language contributor, I help attorneys make powerful first impressions, build confidence, and master the art of nonverbal communication. And speaking of nonverbal communication, have you ever wondered what your body language says in the courtroom, during mediation, or even at a networking function? That's exactly what I teach in my Bodies Don't Lie bootcamp that is open up for attorneys. We do a deep dive into reading body language, jury selection, client prep, and so much more. And if you're ready to elevate your presence and persuasion skills, check out the link in the show notes below. Now we're going to jump into our conversation. And as always, I like to talk a little bit about color. Today I'm wearing a seafoam green, which is a very light version of green. And as I've always said, green is a good color of growth and harmony. And if you're wearing the lighter versions like I am, it can have a more calming effect, especially when you pair it with brown, which is a very relatable color. So just some things to keep in mind if you're going to be doing some mediation or you have a client meeting and your client's a little bit nervous, this might be a good color to try, even as an accent color for a scarf, accessory, or tie. So we are going to get started. Today, our guest is Amber Inman. As a managing partner of Camp Inman and Associates, Amber is devoted. She devotes her practice to the defense of bodily injury, uninsured and underinsured motorists, and subrogation matters on behalf of individuals, businesses, and insurance carriers. Now, while the majority of her work is primarily related to litigation and trial practice, her cases also include establishment of guardianships for minors of incapacitated persons, administration of estates, as well as pre-litigation matters. And Amber is she's certified by the Florida Supreme Court as a circuit civil mediator and is qualified to serve as a court-appointed arbitrator through the state of Florida. Amber serves as a board member of the Florida Defense Lawyers Association, and she is active with the Young Lawyers Division, encouraging mentorship and development of defense attorneys throughout the state. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into our conversation. I would love for you to share a little bit more with our listeners about your journey. What kind of prompted you to go into law?
Thank you again so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak about what a great subject and share my story with everyone. I'm a Tampa girl, born and raised, and I have the pleasure of having a father that's a lawyer here in town as well. And he went back to school later in life, non-traditional student. He was in his 40s after having many careers. And I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as he went through law school. And it was such an inspiration to me. He took me to classes and I sat in the lecture hall, no idea what was going on, but I was there and I got to see how important it was to him, what a challenge it was, but also how rewarding it was, not only for him, but for our family. Because we got to enjoy his successes once he established himself as an attorney and started his own business here in town. So he definitely guided the path that I took, but ultimately gave me a lot of room to develop my own practice, my own career, my own identity as an attorney. And so I went to University of Tampa here locally, attended Florida A&M University College of Law in Orlando, then came back to Tampa after I graduated to start working, started my career in criminal defense with the Public Defender's Office. And after about 3 years of doing that, moved into the private sector doing civil litigation and have been here ever since.
That's wonderful. And I love how you talk about, with your dad. I can kind of relate to that a little bit because I'm an entrepreneur. I have been for a long time. And, I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My father, he was an electrician, but he had his own business. And I got to spend a lot of time with him growing up because of that, and I think sometimes when we are spending time with our parents and they have a particular career path, it can really have an immense impression and benefit to the children. And I even talk about stories where my dad's like, I don't really remember that, but I can remember it like it's yesterday because it was just such a great experiences. Again, just him even taking me to school and being able to drop me off and pick me up, and things that sometimes parents don't get an opportunity to do. So I love that were sharing that. And now, does your dad still practice law? Is he still?
He is still actively practicing, and it's as he's getting older, there are things that I often help him out with or volunteer to help, even though he may not need my help. And it really is so rewarding to be able to do that for him. And it's a very unique bond that we share, that he's truly a mentor for me and my dad. I'm just so lucky in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know you talked about, and I mentioned in your bio, you do a lot with the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar, which I think it's one of the largest sections of the Florida Bar. There's so many attorneys out there in Florida and outside of Florida that are getting started with their practice, or they're getting started. They just, secured their first job. And, I think there's so much, there can be a lot of overwhelm, just in that regard. What would you say are two key pieces of advice that you would give to a young attorney about things that they often overlook, but they should be doing? Do you have two things you would share with them?
Absolutely. So first and foremost is go to the courthouse. Watch what is going on. It doesn't matter if it's an area of law that you are practicing in, you will learn something from being in the courtroom. You may learn something about procedure. You may learn something substantive about evidence or the rule of law that's being applied. You may just learn about a particular judge's preferences and how they run their courtroom. You may also see a more experienced attorney making an argument and not only listening to what their argument is and the substance and content of it, but how they address the court, how they stand, how they place their papers, if they have any at all. All of those little observations that we can make passively in the courtroom really contribute to our growth. And I feel like the more recent attorneys that are coming out of school post-pandemic don't have the benefit of being able to access the courtroom or aren't encouraged as much. And I want to remind them that our courts are open. They're public forums with some exceptions, but you're available to go online and watch dockets via Zoom if they're being held virtually. You can walk into a courtroom anywhere in Florida and just sit down and watch with some exceptions. And if anybody asks why you're there, let them know you're there to observe. Sometimes the judges will answer questions, give you an opportunity to get some insight onto why they made the decisions they did or why the procedure is in their particular courtroom. And it can be incredibly insightful. And you never know when you might end up in front of that judge as practitioner.
I love that you shared this, because this is actually something that I do as well when I have time and when I can do it, simply because of what I do, with the continuing legal education, because I can watch, obviously, and I think other attorneys can do this too. There's so many court cases that are high profile, where we can watch and we can pull from that, or at least I can, for body language and color perspectives. But I love that you shared that too, just about, talking with the judge, because, if they're willing to share that with them, that can, I think, definitely give them a leg up, and help them in the future as well. So thank you. Now, you're a mediator as well. Is that fairly recent that you became a mediator, or?
I've been a mediator for a few years now, maybe 3 or 4 years. It's not my major focus of my practice since I'm still litigating a lot, but I always enjoyed alternative dispute resolution. I always admired the mediators I worked with and their ability to help parties reach a resolution rather than just continuing to argue about issues. So I just decided to take the leap and take the class and devote some time. And by taking the class and learning about the mediator's role, I think it made me a better litigator in the mediation context. And I think I can represent my clients more efficiently because I understand how the procedure is supposed to work. I have a different insight and perspective. And I think my negotiation skills are different because I've played the mediator role as well.
And what advice would you have if somebody is facing, they have to go to mediation, whether that's an attorney who's going to be going to mediation, or if it's their client? Do you have any specific advice that you would say to them to kind of keep in mind?
be prepared. Take it seriously. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a unique opportunity to try to resolve a dispute. You may not get everything accomplished in that day or in that session, but there may be some ground that's shared. There may be some common understanding. You might be able to make some strides to maybe set up an opportunity to negotiate a full resolution at a later date. But I think taking the opportunity to be prepared for your mediation, knowing your client's case well, sharing their interests and their perspective in a way that makes the other side understand where you are and where you think this case is likely to go, and really setting reasonable expectations for everybody are some really good tips. Sharing with the mediator in advance some of the big issues can also help kind of kick off the negotiations in a really strong way, because your mediator is now educated on the facts surrounding the dispute. What are the major issues? Maybe what are you agreeing on? And that can really help facilitate a conversation that is productive and maybe gets the whole case resolved right there and then, or makes some very large strides in that direction.
I love that you shared that. And as someone who has gone through mediation before, it is that opportunity, but both parties have to, like you said, they have to take it seriously, and they have to be willing to kind of come to the table and go, okay, what can we do to resolve this? And I guess not everybody does that. It seems like it's sometimes I think people are like, they're set on, this is what I want. And if I don't get it, we're going to court. So you spend time in courtrooms and mediation scenarios, and obviously with the show being Chromatic Counsel, I always love to ask questions about go-to items in your wardrobe or go-to colors. Do you have like a, I don't want to call it a lucky suit or like a lucky outfit that you're like, hey, every time I wear this I feel empowered or I always win? Do you have some go-to colors that you pull from with your wardrobe or go-to outfit?
Definitely. I'm wearing a lot of dark colors today on top, but I'm glad you mentioned green. The skirt I'm wearing does have some Kelly green, some darker tone of green. I had a court hearing this morning, so I'm dressed a little bit more conservatively. When I'm in court, I tend to kind of wear a little bit more of the dark colors, black, dark gray, navy blue. But my go-to when I'm trying to make that statement or get that extra little bit of attention is red and pink. Those are my go-to colors. I think that they're more complementary with my hair color, my eye color, my skin tone, and I just love those colors personally. So when I get a chance, if I'm in trial, my last day of trial, when I give a closing statement, I'm typically wearing a red dress more often than not. Otherwise, I try to incorporate pinks and reds by way of a little pop of color. Maybe it's in a bag or my shoes or a small accessory, rather than having a red suit or a pink suit. I don't necessarily want to look like Lawyer Barbie when I'm in a courtroom.
Yeah. Well, I love the red and the pink too. And I think red is definitely a color. It's a power color, just like, our blacks or our navy, colors or charcoal gray. And I think sometimes too, we as women, we need to have a little bit more of that power color sometimes. And that's good that you incorporate that. And I love pink too. Pink is a great color, as well with mediation. It's a soothing color, wearing that, it can help calm your client. It can help both parties, especially if they're angry, kind of just take a deep breath and calm. It's a very calming color, especially the lighter the shade. So I love that you're wearing pink as well. So obviously you're doing mediation too. I wanted to just kind of take a side question here and ask you, like, what are your firm, do you have any, not openings, but like, what are you looking for right now with clientele? Obviously people who have been hurt in an accident, maybe people who are looking for a guardianship, but are you looking to kind of open like, hey, we're looking for more mediation type clients right now? What are you looking for with your firm?
Thanks. That's a great question. So our firm has changed a lot over the last few years. We've had some change in our partnership and management. There's been changes in the law in Florida that have really affected how insurance companies litigate their cases, how personal injury cases are handled. So I'd say in the last year or so, our firm has really opened up the practice to be more general in nature. I'm falling back a little bit on my criminal defense roots. We do accept criminal defense cases. I'll handle injunction matters, which are a little bit criminal, a little bit civil combined together. Traffic court appearances, since I do a lot of auto litigation, all of the traffic statutes are kind of what I deal with every day. So it just goes hand in hand. So really our firm has focused more on general practice. We're heavily focused on civil litigation, but we definitely are servicing clients in a more general practice, individuals that are maybe not backed by insurance companies, they're self-insured, or businesses that don't have insurance company backing them and need representation. Oftentimes, the number one piece of advice I give clients is, what can we do to not take that trip to the courthouse? Because truly, the only people that win in a lawsuit are the lawyers, as that old expression goes. And so when I have a client, I really want to counsel them on what are all the potential ways we could reach a resolution that you're satisfied with without expending all of those extra costs, all of those fees, and the stress that comes with it. And I think it's a pretty good piece of advice, and often they take it. But when we have to take that trip to the courthouse, we do. And so it may be that we more often than not are doing defense work and we're defending a person that's been sued, but often we're having to litigate and bring a case on behalf of a person that has a claim as well. So our practice has definitely opened up. I'm available for mediations and also for non-binding arbitrations as well. And my background is such that I think I offer a unique perspective and knowledge and experience in a lot of very complex subject matters that are often dealing with high dollar amounts of damages, catastrophic injuries, and wrongful death, all of which I've handled in some capacity. So my experience and my background, I think, help allow us to represent people with all kinds of different problems and interests, but also help people resolve issues if we're acting as that neutral mediator or an arbitrator that's trying to make a decision on an outcome of a case.
I love that. And, is there anything else that you'd like to share in closing? Anything coming up with your firm or with you that you'd like to share with everyone?
So our firm will be at the upcoming Judicial Food Festival and Fun Run that is here in Tampa. It's sponsored by the Hillsborough County Bar Association. It's a wonderful event. The runners that are participating in the 5K are pledging for pro bono hours. So it benefits our Bay Area legal services that provide pro bono services to our community. And also the vendors there, which are law firms that volunteer, have awesome food and other sweets and goodies after the run. So we will be there. Please stop by if anyone's there and say hello. We're going to have a great booth with an awesome theme. And then coming up in April with the Florida Defense Lawyers Association, I'm the board member, as you mentioned, and working with the Young Lawyers Division. We have a boot camp, a deposition boot camp coming up that is focused on assisting young lawyers in the civil defense context on how to take, how to defend, how to prepare for depositions of both fact, lay witnesses, and experts. So it's going to be a really great informational session. It's 2 days. It'll be in Central Florida, and we're inviting anybody that's a member of Florida Defense Lawyers Association or anyone interested in becoming a member to sign up. And it's definitely geared towards our younger practitioners that want to get that experience and maybe have some opportunity to role play in a mock deposition with a real expert or real witness to an event.
That's amazing. And I love that you shared those two events. And obviously, if anybody would like to get in touch with you, I have the link to your website in the show notes below. But Amber, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for sharing a little bit about what you're doing and some tips and things like that. I'm sure whoever is listening is getting some value out of what you shared today. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And that is a wrap on today's episode of Chromatic Counsel. And I hope you found inspiration and insight. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below so you'll be notified of our next episode. And definitely share this with a fellow attorney. If you found value, share with a fellow attorney who could use a little bit of color and information in their life, both in and outside of the courtroom. And if you want to be a guest on the show, please click on the link in the show notes below. And I'd love to talk with you and see if you're a good fit for the show. So until next time, I am wishing you a wardrobe full of vibrancy and a career full of confidence.